On a Monday morning in Phoenix, Arizona, a 68-year-old retired teacher named Helen logged into her bank account to pay her electric bill and saw a number that made her heart stop, $142.18. Her balance should have been $127.142.18. Her entire pension, 37 years of teaching, had been wire transferred overnight to an account in Florida. Identity theft. Her life savings. Gone. She called the bank. They said they'd investigate. She called the police. They said it would take time. She called the FBI. They said she'd need to file a report. Helen didn't have time. That money was supposed to cover her medical bills, her rent, her prescriptions. She was 68 years old. She couldn't just start over. Her grandson Marcus was a Hell's Angel. When she called him crying, he listened to the whole story without interrupting. Then he said, "Grandma, give me 48 hours. He made one call. 36 Hell's Angels across 4 states, Arizona, Texas, Louisiana, and Florida, started working. They had contacts in banks, in law enforcement, in private security. They weren't vigilantes, they were investigators. 6 days later, Helen got a call from the FBI. They'd arrested the scammer. All her money had been recovered. Every single dollar. Helen Margaret Torres had spent 37 years teaching 5th grade at Roosevelt Elementary School in Phoenix. She'd taught over 1,000 children how to read, how to write, how to think critically. She'd bought school supplies out of her own pocket when the district budget ran dry. She'd stayed late to tutor struggling students. She'd attended every graduation, every wedding, every funeral of students who became like family. When she retired at 65, the school threw her a party. Former students flew in from across the country. They gave her a plaque that read, "Mrs. Torres, you didn't just teach us. You believed in us." Her pension wasn't much, $300-400 a month, but she'd been careful. She lived modestly in a small house her late husband had left her. She drove a 15-year-old sedan. She clipped coupons and shopped sales. Over the years, she'd saved $127,000. It was supposed to last her through retirement, cover medical expenses, maybe leave a little something for her grandson Marcus when she was gone. She never imagined someone could take it all in a single night. The theft happened on a Sunday. Helen had received an email that looked like it came from her bank. It said there was suspicious activity on her account, and she needed to verify her identity immediately. The email looked legitimate, correct logo, professional formatting, even a customer service number. Helen clicked the link and entered her information: username, password, social security number, date of birth. Within minutes, her account was compromised. By Monday morning, every dollar was gone. When Helen saw that balance, $142.18, she felt her chest tighten. She couldn't breathe. She sat at her kitchen table staring at the screen, hands shaking, trying to understand what had happened. She called the bank's fraud department. They put her on hold for 40 minutes. When someone finally answered, they were polite but unhelpful. "We'll open an investigation. It can take 30 to 90 days. Helen's voice broke. 90 days, that's my life savings. I need that money now. The representative apologized, but said there was nothing more they could do. Helen hung up and called the police. The Phoenix Police Department was sympathetic but realistic. The detective she spoke to explained that cybercrime investigations were complicated. The money had been wired to Florida. That meant it crossed state lines. That meant federal jurisdiction. He gave her the FBI's phone number and told her to file a report online. Helen did. She filled out forms for 2 hours, answering the same questions over and over. Account number, transaction details, how did the breach occur? When she finished, an automated message said someone would contact her within 7 to 10 business days. Helen sat in her living room and cried. She was alone. Her husband had died 6 years ago. Her daughter lived in Oregon and had her own problems. The only family she had nearby was Marcus. Marcus Torres was 29 years old and had been riding with the Hells Angels for 5 years. He worked as a mechanic at a custom bike shop and lived in a small apartment on the south side of Phoenix. His grandmother had raised him after his mother, Helen's daughter, struggled with addiction and disappeared for years. Helen had taken Marcus in when he was 12. She fed him, clothed him, kept him in school, and made sure he graduated. Marcus never forgot that. When Helen called him that Monday afternoon, voice trembling, barely able to speak, Marcus dropped everything. He drove to her house in 15 minutes. Helen was sitting at the kitchen table, still staring at the laptop screen. Marcus sat down beside her and listened as she explained what happened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't offer empty reassurances. He just listened. When she finished, he asked to see the email. Helen showed him. Marcus looked at it for 30 seconds and knew immediately it was a phishing scam. The email address was slightly off, one letter different from the bank's official domain, a detail most people wouldn't notice. Grandma, this is organized fraud. Whoever did this knows what they're doing. They've probably hit dozens of people. Helen's face crumpled. So I'll never get it back. Marcus reached across the table and took her hand. Give me 48 hours. Marcus made one phone call to his club president, a man called Reaper. He explained the situation. Reaper didn't hesitate. I'll make some calls. Within 2 hours, 36 Hells Angels across 4 states were mobilized. They weren't going after the scammer with violence. They were going after him with information. The Hells Angels had members who worked in banks, in IT security, in law enforcement, in private investigation. They had connections that most people didn't have, and they knew how to use them. The first break came from a Hells Angel in Texas named Ghost. He worked in cybersecurity for a financial services company. Marcus sent him the transaction details, account numbers, routing numbers, timestamps. Ghost ran them through a network of databases and tracking tools. Within 6 hours he had a name. The account in Florida that received Helen's money belonged to a shell company called Apex Financial Solutions LLC. It was a fake. The company didn't exist. But the bank account was real, and it had been used in at least 12 other scams across the Southwest. Ghost traced the account activity. Every transaction followed the same pattern. Money came in from victims. Within 24 hours, it was transferred to multiple offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands and Panama. Classic money laundering. But there was one mistake. Whoever ran the scam had used the same IP address for multiple transactions. That IP address was registered to a residential address in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Ghost sent the information to Marcus. Marcus sent it to a Hells Angel in Louisiana named Tracker. Tracker had spent 15 years in the Army as a military intelligence analyst. After he got out, he worked as a private investigator, specializing in financial crimes. He took the Fort Lauderdale address and started digging. Property records, utility bills, social media accounts. Within 12 hours he had a face and a name. 34 years old, no criminal record, worked as a financial consultant, lived in a rental condo in Fort Lauderdale, drove a leased BMW, posted photos on Instagram of expensive watches and beach vacations. Classic con artist profile. Tracker found something else. Raymond Cole had a partner, a woman named Jessica Mirren. She worked at a call center in Tampa that handled customer service for several banks, including the one Helen used. Jessica had access to customer data. She was the inside connection. She identified targets, elderly customers with substantial savings, and passed their information to Raymond. He sent the phishing emails. When victims clicked the link and entered their information, Raymond drained their accounts. Jessica got a cut. They'd been running the scam for at least 8 months. Marcus took all the information, names, addresses, transaction records, evidence of the inside connection, and compiled it into a single file. Then he called a Hells Angel in Florida named Judge. Judge was a retired FBI agent who still had connections in the bureau. He'd spent 20 years investigating organized crime and financial fraud before retiring and joining the Hells Angels. Marcus explained the situation and sent him the file. Judge reviewed it. 30 minutes later he called Marcus back. This is solid. I'm taking it to someone I trust. Judge contacted a current FBI agent in the Miami field office, a woman he'd worked with for years. He explained that a civilian had uncovered a large-scale phishing and wire fraud operation. He handed over the file. The agent reviewed it and was stunned. The file contained evidence that would normally take investigators months to compile. Bank records, IP addresses, social media profiles, photos, timelines. Everything was documented and organized. The agent asked where the information came from. Judge smiled. A concerned citizen with good connections. The FBI moved fast. They obtained warrants for Raymond Cole and Jessica Mirren. 2 days later, agents arrested Raymond at his condo in Fort Lauderdale. They seized his laptop, his phone, and records of dozens of fraudulent transactions. Jessica was arrested at the call center in Tampa. She cooperated immediately, admitting her role in exchange for a reduced sentence. Within 48 hours, the FBI had frozen all the offshore accounts connected to the scam. They began the process of recovering the stolen funds. Helen didn't know any of this was happening. Marcus had told her to be patient and trust him. She tried, but every night she lay awake staring at the ceiling, thinking about her empty bank account. thinking about the bills she couldn't pay, thinking about the medical appointments she'd have to cancel. She'd worked her entire life. She'd been responsible. She'd saved. And someone had taken it all in a single night. It felt like a violation, like her whole life had been reduced to nothing. On the 6th day, Helen's phone rang. It was an FBI agent from the Phoenix field office. He introduced himself and asked if she had a few minutes to talk. Helen's heart sank. She assumed it was bad news. The agent explained that they'd arrested 2 suspects connected to the theft of her pension. He said they'd recovered the money and were in the process of returning it to the victims. Helen couldn't speak. She just sat there, phone pressed to her ear, tears streaming down her face. The agent continued, "Mrs. Torres, I want you to know that this case was solved because of your grandson and his associates. They provided us with evidence that would have taken us months to gather. Your money will be back in your account within 72 hours. When Helen hung up, she called Marcus. He answered on the first ring. "Grandma." Helen couldn't form words. She just cried. Marcus waited. Finally, she whispered, "They got it back." Marcus smiled. "I told you. 48 hours. Helen laughed through her tears. "It's been 6 days. Marcus chuckled. "I was close." 3 days later, Helen checked her bank account. 127, 142, 18. Every dollar restored. She sat at her kitchen table and stared at the screen, overwhelmed with relief. She thought about all the people who'd helped her. Marcus, the Hells Angels across 4 states who'd dropped everything to track down a criminal, the FBI agents who'd acted quickly. She thought about how easy it would have been for everyone to say, "Sorry, there's nothing we can do." But they didn't. They fought for her. Helen wanted to thank them. She called Marcus and asked if she could meet the people who helped. Marcus hesitated. The Hells Angels didn't do this for recognition. They did it because it was the right thing to do. But he understood why his grandmother needed to say thank you. He made some calls. 2 weeks later, Helen stood in the parking lot of a roadside diner outside Phoenix. 36 Hells Angels from 4 states had gathered. They'd ridden hundreds of miles just to meet her. Helen walked down the line, shaking hands, hugging strangers who'd become family. She met Ghost, the cybersecurity expert from Texas. She met Tracker, the private investigator from Louisiana. She met Judge, the retired FBI agent from Florida. She met Reaper, Marcus's club president, who'd made the first call. Each one told her the same thing. "We'll take care of our own." Helen didn't understand. "But I'm not one of you." Reaper smiled. "You raised Marcus. That makes you family." Helen tried to give them money. She wanted to pay them for their time, their expertise, their effort. They refused. Every single one. "We don't want your money, Mrs. Torres. We wanted justice, and you got it." Helen broke down crying again. She'd spent her whole life teaching children about kindness, about integrity, about standing up for what's right. And these men and women, strangers in leather vests with tattoos and motorcycles, had shown her what those values looked like in action. Before she left, Helen asked Marcus one question. "Why do they do this? Why do they help people like me?" Marcus thought for a moment. "Because most of these guys grew up with nothing. They know what it's like to be powerless, to have someone take advantage of you. And now that they have the skills and connections to fight back, they do. Not for glory, not for money, just because it's right." Helen nodded. She understood these weren't outlaws. They were protectors. They were the people who showed up when the system failed. They were the ones who made sure justice wasn't just a word in a textbook. 6 months later, Helen received a letter from the FBI. Raymond Cole had been sentenced to 8 years in federal prison for wire fraud and identity theft. Jessica Mirren received 4 years. The letter also said that the FBI had used the evidence provided by Marcus and his associates to identify and prosecute 12 other scam operations across the country. Over 400 victims had their money returned. Helen read the letter 3 times. She thought about all those people, strangers she'd never meet, who got their lives back because 36 Hells Angels decided to help one retired teacher in Phoenix. Helen started volunteering. She went to senior centers and community centers and taught elderly people how to recognize phishing scams. She showed them what to look for in emails, how to verify links, how to protect their personal information. She talked about her own experience, not with shame, but with purpose. She wanted to make sure no one else went through what she went through. And at every presentation, she wore a pin. A small death head pin that Marcus had given her. The Hells Angel symbol. People asked about it. She told them the story. And every time, people were shocked. "Hells Angels helped you." Helen smiled. They saved me. 1 year after the theft, Helen threw a party at her house. She invited Marcus and Reaper and as many Hell's Angels as could make it. 23 showed up. They filled her small living room, drinking coffee and eating homemade cookies. Helen stood in the center of the room and raised her glass. I spent 37 years teaching children that good people exist, that kindness matters. That integrity isn't just a word. I thought I was teaching them, but you all taught me. You showed me that family isn't about blood. It's about showing up. It's about fighting for people who can't fight for themselves. So thank you for everything. The room was silent. Then Reaper raised his glass. To Mrs. Torres, the toughest teacher we never had. Everyone laughed and raised their glasses. Helen smiled. She'd lost her life savings once, but she'd gained something far more valuable. She'd gained a family, a brotherhood, a reminder that even in a world full of thieves and liars and people who take advantage of the vulnerable, there are still people who fight back, people who stand up, people who refuse to let injustice win. And sometimes those people ride motorcycles and wear leather vests and look nothing like the heroes you'd expect, but they're heroes all the same.